Urban, rural, north, east, south, and west. We don't have enough tests. Well, now help is on the way because Democrats stood and fought for it.
President Trump says he'll sign the bill when it passes in the House of Representatives on Thursday. But in coming hours, his signature will first go on an executive order limiting immigration.
It would be wrong and unjust for Americans laid off by the virus to be replaced with new immigrant labor flown in from abroad. We must first take care of the American worker, take care of the American worker.
The details of yet another ban on immigration and travel into the U.S. is yet to be made public. No visas have been issued for weeks because U.S. embassies are shuttered around the globe. And this week, the restrictions on travel across the U.S.'s southern and northern borders were extended for another 30 days. President Trump says the order will not apply to those visiting the U.S. on a temporary basis, but rather on those seeking permanent residence. Critics argue that the move would have no impact on public health or unemployment, but is rather yet another attempt to decide who gets to be a U.S. citizen in the long term. Administration officials have been working through the day and night to draft the executive order and clarify exactly what the president means. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Donald Trump's also promising to help the US oil sector. Prices are falling because of anxiety over the pandemic's economic effect. The international benchmark for oil, Brent crude, is hovering around $17 a barrel, which is its lowest point in 2 decades. From the New York Stock Exchange, Gabriel Elizondo reports on the financial fallout.
It was an ominous sign for those hoping Wall Street had turned a corner in recent weeks. For the second straight day, U.S. stocks slid at the opening bell as the chaos in the oil markets weighed heavily on investors' minds, and apparently on the mind of the president as well. As the Dow lost nearly 500 points to kick off the trading day, President Donald Trump sent out a tweet promising financial support for U.S. oil producers. Monday's historic crash in the U.S. oil price, deep into negative territory, continued to send shockwaves on Tuesday, with other oil markets also falling. Brent crude, the international benchmark, dropped to its lowest price since 2002. The problems are many. First, too much oil is being produced, much of it sitting in oil tanker ships offshore with nowhere to go.
The amount of volume of oil that is kept in storage needs to be consumed first before the new production can be brought into consumption, into the consumption that is existing right now. So we are looking at years from now before we can see a normalization.
And with uncertainty about coronavirus and no vaccine or proven treatment on the horizon, the market remains uncertain. It was barely a week ago a record deal to cut production by oil-producing countries, including recent rivals Saudi Arabia and Russia. It was meant to alleviate the pressure on prices, but it clearly didn't work. It's another blow to President Trump, a keen backer of the U.S. oil industry. Texas, Louisiana, and North Dakota, all states Trump won in the last election.
The future outlook for oil remains poor. Crude is traded based on speculative pricing, meaning how much traders think oil will be worth at any given point in the future. On Tuesday, the futures market for U.S. oil in June dropped to under $10 a barrel. With the U.S. economy still shut down, nobody driving to work, flying, or traveling, and a realization that it will remain like this for weeks, if not months to come. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera, New York.
Well, they set their differences aside for at least an afternoon. President Trump, who hosted the New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo at the White House. They agreed to work on doubling testing in the state, which is the epicenter of the U.S. outbreak. More than 250,000 people are infected there. 15,000 have died. Cuomo and the president have recently accused each other of failing to respond properly. Earlier in the day, nurses protested outside the White House, demanding more personal protective equipment. Some held photos and read out the names of colleagues who died after treating COVID-19 patients. More than 9,000 American health workers have tested positive. Our coronavirus coverage continues in a moment. We will look at tourism.
I'm Scott Heidler in Kanchanaburi, Thailand, where the economic impact of COVID-19 on the critical tourism industry is hitting hard. With no visitors, one elephant camp is struggling to keep the animals fed.
Hello, welcome to another look at the international forecast. Plenty of showers straddling the equator now, as they should do. The seasonal rains, they're nudging a little further northward, so we will see some wetter weather pushing into southern parts of Vietnam. Maybe seeing some showers just leaking out of southern China as well, actually, pushing their way into Thailand as we go on through Thursday and on into Friday as well. Some big downpours here, central areas of Vietnam also in with the possibility of seeing some flooding. Showers there around the Malay Peninsula, pushing down across a good part of Malaysia. But for Indonesia, it looks a little drier than it has done recently. And that dry weather extending across a good part of Australia. Largely clear skies, bits and pieces of cloud rolling through the bight. You'll see some showers just creeping across South Australia then as we go through Thursday, nudging their way towards Adelaide. Thursday into Friday, that wetter weather will push into that western side of Victoria. Tasmania seeing the blustery showers sliding across the ditch and on towards New Zealand. The South Island will see some wetter weather as we go on through Friday. But behind that, as you can see across much of Australia, it's fine and dry. Lots of warm sunshine coming through at 29 in Brisbane. Chance of the odd onshore shower into northern parts of Queensland, but fine further west.
A history of guerrilla warfare, a place on the global stage. The PLO gaining strength, their revolutionary zeal knowing no bounds. But did a series of violent acts by their splinter groups damage the Palestinian cause or ensure its survival? Chronicling the turbulent story of the struggle for a Palestinian homeland. PLO, History of a Revolution, on Al Jazeera.
So these are the top stories this hour on Al Jazeera. Iran says it's launched its first military satellite into orbit, a move which will likely increase tension with the United States. Washington says Tehran's space program is a cover for missile development, but Iran's leaders deny that. The US Senate's passed a near $500 billion relief package to aid small businesses. It will also provide more funds for hospitals and coronavirus testing. The bill will go to the House of Representatives for a vote. And Donald Trump is promising to help the US oil industry as prices fall because of anxiety over the economic damage of the virus. Brent crude, the international benchmark for oil, is hovering around $17 a barrel, which is its lowest point in 2 decades. But Australia is taking advantage of that, and it's spent $59 million to buy oil at record low prices. The oil will help build up Australia's emergency stockpile. It'll be held in the US reserves initially until storage space is made available locally. Australia imports 90% of its fuel, mostly from the Middle East and Asia. But US storage facilities are fast running out of room. This is one in Oklahoma. It's at 70% capacity, but traders say all of the space storage is already booked. The lack of storage is a big factor in these falling oil prices. To South Africa, where the president's announced a $26 billion rescue package to deal with the devastating economic impact of COVID-19. Cyril Ramaphosa unveiled what he called an extraordinary budget in a special address to the nation. About $2.6 billion would go to the poor in the form of grants. South Africa already under a 5-week lockdown. It has recorded more than 3,400 infections and 58 deaths.
We recognize that food distribution capacity of the government is not adequate to meet the huge need that has arisen since the start of the epidemic.
And on top of that, more than 70,000 South African soldiers, which is almost the entire standing army, are being deployed to enforce the lockdown. They will join the nearly 2,300 personnel already on the streets. Fiona Miller is in Johannesburg and says this big deployment has got people worried the lockdown will go on much longer than planned.
That's the question from millions of South Africans, that this new information hasn't yet been announced formally by the president. It's emerged through a procedural letter that he's had to write to Parliament saying that this is what's going to happen, an additional 73,000 soldiers. And now South Africans are asking why. South Africa is currently in a 5-week lockdown. It's due to end at the end of next week. And so now, would this mean that the lockdown would be extended? We have heard from the Minister of Defence, who's spoken to the media, saying that in addition to the troops we see on the streets so far, these soldiers will be on those streets to help with medical services and also give support to the troops already monitoring the borders, patrolling the streets, who are in charge of roadblocks to ensure that the lockdown is observed. But this additional deployment has certainly raised more questions than it's answered so far.
At least 7 people are thought to have contracted the coronavirus during the primary election in the US state of Wisconsin earlier this month. They include 6 voters and 1 poll worker who were identified in Milwaukee. Officials say the number of election-related infections could increase after more data becomes available. Wisconsin so far has 4,620 known cases and nearly 250 deaths. We turn our attention to the UK, where more than 17,000 people have now died in hospitals, and there are fears the true extent of the outbreak is actually much higher. But while many health officials tackle the virus, others are responding to a surge in demand for mental health services by both adults and children. This report from Neve Barker.
These are bewildering and disjointed days, especially for the young.
The coronavirus is a virus that affects the respiratory system. My life changed because I can't go outside.
It's like a germ that wants to make people sick.
An Oxford University study found that 1 in 5 children are now afraid to leave their homes.
We have to be careful to not get sick. My life has changed because I can't go to school, and it's a bit hard learning at home.
A sense of disorientation and confusion, I think, would have been a very understandable, natural, ordinary reaction that a lot of children have had. And increasingly, I think, as the days have unfolded, things started to feel more restrictive, more empty, a sense of things unravelling a little bit.
Technologies help close the gap left by social distancing. This, a video play date hosted by Elmo and some other familiar faces. But for some children, the strangeness of it all is distressing, especially for those with serious mental health problems. In the past few weeks, secure mental health units have been forced to discharge large numbers of patients, including children, over fears of staff and bed shortages.
Al Jazeera has learned of at least one frontline secure mental health unit in London that's had to send home 40% of their patients. There are children suffering from psychosis who believe the virus is a conspiracy, others with eating disorders or histories of self-harm, and there are some with obsessive disorders like compulsive hand-washing. The virus only seems to confirm their worst fears.
We're hearing about people with some severe mental illness, such as schizophrenia or bipolar, who are being sent to their families, and the families are not being given any support or any information as to how best to cope with it. We fear that we're going to have a time bomb now that is building up to a major mental health epidemic in the months to come.
We need to be careful. My life changed.
Wash your hands. My hopes for the future are that, like, scientists find a medicine to cure the coronavirus, that the coronavirus is stopped.
There are many layers to this crisis. The world's attention is on controlling the virus and saving lives. But there are countless hidden victims. Even when the pandemic passes, there will be many in desperate need of help. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, London.
Mexico's government says it is heading into the most serious stage of the pandemic. The number of infections has surpassed 9,000 with nearly 900 deaths. So as it prepares hospitals and clinics to meet surging demand, the government is also freeing prisoners whose crimes aren't considered too serious. Manuel Rappler has more.
The worst of Mexico's COVID-19 contagion could be only days away. Mexico's deputy health minister warns the national health system could soon be under the greatest pressure from the virus.
Today we want to start phase 3 of the pandemic, remembering that we are in the phase of rapid ascent, where a large number of cases of infections and hospitalizations will accumulate, and we must continue to maintain social distancing so that these are minimized as much as possible.
For Mexican health officials, phase 3 refers to the point where the virus will spread the fastest, hitting its peak in the first half of May. The announcement also coincides with another major public policy change, the passage of a new amnesty law, which will oversee the release of thousands of low-level offenders from Mexican prisons.
This will allow us to release people from prison who have not committed serious crimes, those who are sick or elderly. This will allow us to carry out a humanitarian gesture.
Human rights organizations have warned that Mexico's overcrowded prisons are a ticking time bomb for contagion of coronavirus. Those familiar with the legislation, however, say that while the new law is an important milestone in social justice, it will take months to implement, meaning the impact on COVID-19 containment will likely be minimal.
I think this is an important law that we've needed for a long time because of all the injustice that occurs. But one thing should be clear, this law will not contribute to the depressurization of the penitentiary system in the context of COVID-19. But it could help in the future and for future pandemics.
Also bracing for the worst of the virus are tens of thousands of migrants, among them asylum seekers, stuck in Mexico under tough new rules imposed by the Trump administration.
Governors across the...
On Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted that he would be temporarily suspending immigration to the United States.
Mexican officials say they don't expect this latest executive order by the White House to have much impact on existing COVID-19 containment policy, which already restricts migration and includes a partial closure of the U.S.-Mexico border. Manuel Rapalo, Al Jazeera, Mexico City.
Bit of other news now on the number of victims in Canada's worst mass shooting has now reached 22. It now includes a pregnant nurse and a 17-year-old girl. The gunman drove across the eastern province of Nova Scotia, shooting people in various communities. The spree lasted almost 12 hours before he was shot dead by police. Facebook will buy almost 10% of the Indian digital company Jio Platforms for $5.5 billion, the biggest foreign investment in India's technology sector. Jio has more than 380 million subscribers. It operates broadband, mobile services, online commerce. So this deal will allow Facebook to partner its WhatsApp messaging service with Jio as it looks to expand into one of its largest growth markets. Business also booming for the world's largest internet streaming service because of the pandemic. Between January and March, Netflix signed up 16 million new subscribers, double the number it was expecting, and its shares have picked up 11%. But most industries worldwide are suffering, and of course that includes tourism. Thailand, for one, is expecting to lose 24 million visitors this year. And the impact on elephant camps has been devastating. Owners are running out of money to feed the animals. Scott Heidler reports now from Kanchanaburi.
The elephants of the Tawi Chai camp enjoy their morning river bath, washing away the dust, cooling down from the searing Thai summer, but unaware that their future is uncertain. The mahouts, or caretakers, are keeping their routines as much as possible despite missing the last 3 weeks of the tourist high season. Like all non-essential businesses in Thailand, the government ordered the camp closed because of COVID-19. Domrung Longsakun has run the business since he took over from his father 20 years ago, when it was started as a refuge for stray elephants. The revenue from the visitors, mostly foreigners, usually covers the $30,000 it takes to run the camp each month. But now, he's struggling.
I told my staff that we have to keep fighting together. The camp is not a machine. You can't just simply turn it off. I'm managing living beings, my staff, and my elephants. I can't just simply stop.
Damrung says that there are many other people in his community harder hit by the pandemic than he is. With funds from previous tourist seasons, he's able to keep the elephants fed for now. But that might change. He might need to ask for donations if he's not able to reopen the park over the next few months. One way he's offsetting costs, local farmers are allowing the mahouts to chop down banana trees for the 25 elephants to eat. They feed on the soft tree trunks as drought has prevented them from bearing fruit. The camp is the only home Sumkit Meiti Shatekun has ever known. Both his parents were working there when he was born. He's now raising his own family on the camp. Somkit and the other mahouts have taken pay cuts.
I'm worried about many things. The elephants, my family. How am I going to feed them? How am I going to pay my bills?
With little time to prepare, the elephant camp has been blindsided by the coronavirus, and even if it reopens, it's unclear if it will be able to survive.
I can't see when this outbreak is going to end. I have no idea what the tourism industry will look like in the next few months, but I think it will be like this for a while. I have to carry on.
Thai officials estimate that the flow of tourism dollars will be down 60% this year, so Damrung and those at the camp will have to carry on. And most likely, in the next few months, they'll also need to find other ways to get their next meal. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera, Kanchanaburi.
At 1:30, we'll take you through the headlines on Al Jazeera. Iran says it has launched its first military satellite into orbit. That is likely to increase tension with the United States, which says Tehran's space program is a cover for missile development, though Iran's leaders deny this. More from Zain Basravi in Tehran.
What we know is that this is what the Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, say is their first military satellite being launched into space. They call it the Noor-1, and it is orbiting in the thermosphere at around 425 kilometers up. That's about half the distance of the first satellite ever launched into space by Soviet Russia, Sputnik, of course. Now, we do know that Iran has, for the first several years, for the first decade of this century, they've been developing the kind of rockets required to achieve orbital launch. They achieved that in 2009, and since then they've launched a number of satellites.
A disaster area has been declared in Yemen's southern port city of Aden after it was hit by flash flooding. The Prime Minister is asking for foreign help. 8 people, including children, were killed when heavy rain inundated streets and homes. Latest coronavirus news, and the US Senate's passed a nearly $500 billion relief package to help small businesses. It will also provide more funds for hospitals and coronavirus testing. The bill now goes to the House of Representatives for a vote. Donald Trump also promising to help the US oil sector as prices fall because of anxiety over the economic damage. Brent crude, the international benchmark for oil, is hovering around $17 a barrel, the lowest it's been in 2 decades. And in South Africa, the president has announced a $26 billion rescue package to deal with the economic impact of COVID-19. Cyril Ramaphosa unveiled what he called an extraordinary budget in a special address to the nation. South Africa currently under a 5-week lockdown. And also, more than 70,000 South African soldiers, which is almost the entire standing army, are being deployed to enforce that lockdown. They will join personnel who are already out on the streets. Peter's got the news hour for you in about half an hour. PLO, History of a Revolution, is next. When a Prime Minister takes a lump of coal into his own parliament, that coal means a lot to the country's fortunes.
We bring you the stories and developments that are rapidly changing the world we live in.
Get Brexit done. That was a slogan that won it for the Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Counting the cost on Al Jazeera.
Be the hero the world needs right now. Wash your hands.
In 1948, the State of Israel was proclaimed. Palestine was lost. 16 years later, in 1964, the Palestine Liberation Organization, or the PLO, was founded. Made up of different factions, the PLO has been at the heart of the struggle to regain Palestine ever since. By the end of the 60s, the Palestinians had become masters of their own destiny. But a bloody showdown was on the horizon. Not with Israel, but with fellow Arabs. The Palestinian Commando movement emerged as a force to be reckoned with in the region following the defeat of the Arab states in the 1967 war. The Palestinians had taken their first step towards emancipation from the Arab world.
All of these factors dealt a knockout blow to the Arab custodianship of the Palestinians and their cause, and thus Palestinians became the masters of their destiny.
The Palestinians took full advantage of the state of chaos suffered by the defeated Arab regimes. Palestinian guerrilla factions, the most prominent of which was Fatah, consolidated their grip on the refugee camps in the Arab world. Hundreds of fresh recruits enrolled to join these factions. The image of young Fidaiyin, or freedom fighters, clad in the traditional Palestinian headscarf, became an icon of resistance. Egyptian President Jamal Abdel Nasser cast aside his initial misgivings and embraced Fatah. At the same time, he dissolved his traditional alliance with the Arab nationalist movement, a rival Palestinian faction to Fatah.
Nasser broke off his relationship with the Arab nationalist movement and adopted Fatah. Not only did he adopt Fatah, but he also took Arafat with him on a trip to Moscow.
I walked in and Nasser met me across the room. And lo and behold, the Soviet Troika got up, walked towards me and greeted me. The next day, they launched an official dialogue with me.
Other Arab regimes also vied for influence among the Palestinians as a way to gain leverage on the regional scene. Both Iraq and Syria encouraged the establishment of new Palestinian guerrilla factions allied to them. A declassified CIA document found that Fatah's independence had influenced Syria's decision to set up a Palestinian faction whose allegiance lay firmly with Damascus.
The Syrian government, unable to subvert Fatah for use as a political weapon, recently organized a group known as the Vanguard of the People's Liberation War.
But not all Arab states held the Palestinians in such high esteem. King Hussein was still reeling from the loss of the West Bank in 1967.
Israel's occupation of the West Bank effectively meant the loss of half the country. Imagine a person suddenly having to walk on one leg. That's why the 1967 war was such an earthquake for Jordan.
In Jordan, armed Palestinians strolled through the streets, enjoying freedom of movement and launching operations from Jordanian territory against Israel. Jordan began to view these attacks with increasing alarm. Nasser was assisting the Palestinians in training and arms, but he ensured that no operations were launched from Egyptian territory without stringent Egyptian control and coordination. Fatah and other Palestinian factions acted with much greater freedom within the weaker state of Jordan. In 1969, Palestinian commandos shot down a Lebanese army helicopter during clashes with the Lebanese state. An Egyptian brokered agreement known as the Cairo Accord put an end to the clashes. But the accord effectively legitimized the presence of armed Palestinian factions on Lebanese soil, something which was to have serious consequences for stability in Lebanon in the years to come. Besides creating waves in Arab regimes, the Palestinian factions also revolutionized their own society. In 1969, Fatah leader Yasser Arafat was elected chairman of the PLO. The election marked a new era. The guerrillas were in the ascendant, overthrowing the traditional hold of more established Palestinian families. Such was the impact of the PLO and the Fidaiyin that Arafat's image had made the cover of Time magazine. But it was in Jordan the base for most of the Palestinian factions, where the Fedayeen's growing assertiveness caused most problems. They had set up a state within a state in Jordan, and the actions they planned and carried out soon began to rock the region. Armed gunmen roamed the streets of the capital Amman and Jordan's other main cities like Irbid and Zarqa. Palestinian guerrillas no longer restricted themselves to bases in the more inaccessible parts of the country. Complaints about Palestinian excesses quickly mounted.
Between 1967 and 1971, there were more than 30,000 cases of lawlessness, from the throwing of hand grenades to premeditated murder. There were even attacks against His Majesty the King. All of this was tolerated with tremendous patience by His Majesty, because I think he felt a certain responsibility for the events of 1967. To his dying days, he felt it, especially the loss of Jerusalem.
King Hussein may have felt for the loss of Jerusalem and the West Bank in 1967, but his patience with the Palestinians was beginning to wear thin. For their part, Palestinian figures to this day contend that dark forces were at play, determined to bring about a showdown.
To be honest, we were not saints in Jordan. We made mistakes, but these mistakes were made out to be sins. Jordanian intelligence used to create their own Fedayeen organizations whose role was to wreak havoc in the country. We apprehended one such organization set up by military intelligence with some 70 members. We deported them to Syria and we later released them.
The revolutionary zeal of the Palestinians knew no boundaries. Radical leftist ideology could be seen sprayed on mosque walls. Private property was considered up for grabs.
This leftist zeal, I call it their late childhood, manifested itself in the celebration of Lenin's birthday and delivering Marxist speeches from pulpits of mosques. It was an excuse for theft. Expensive cars would be stolen, and the excuse was that they belonged to the bourgeois classes. It was leftist immaturity.
They were acts of provocation. The Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine used to paint slogans such as "All power to the resistance." What does this mean? It means that the Democratic Front was working towards the overthrow of the Jordanian regime.
Tensions were rising on the streets of Amman. The dominant Palestinian faction, Fatah, attempted to distance itself from such excesses. But the Arafat could not or would not rein in the different factions and was unable to prevent the situation spiraling out of control. Groups such as the Popular Front and the Democratic Front were independent factions over which Arafat exerted little control. Things began to come to a head in July 1970 when Palestinian factions in Jordan staged massive rallies condemning President Nasser for accepting a peace plan submitted by U.S. Secretary of State William Rogers. Palestinian demonstrators shouted insults at Nasser. The Egyptian leader was furious.
Nasser's aide Haikal said, "What are you doing? The president is upset. You are swearing at us and using the radio station we provided you with in Egypt to do it." Then Nasser received us in Alexandria. He said he had been pacing up and down for 2 hours, trying to stop himself from saying anything that would hurt us.
With tensions increasing in Jordan, it was a bad time for the Palestinians to fall out of favor with Nasser. To this day, some Palestinians feel the Egyptian leader gave a nod and a wink to King Hussein of Jordan to punish the Palestinians.
That's true, he told King Hussein to twist our ear, but he didn't ask him to massacre us. And then Nasser went to Marsa Matruh, so he would not be in Cairo when things came to a head.
But the Jordanians were still in two minds about what course of action to pursue against the armed Palestinians in their midst. Prime Minister Wasfi Attal recommended a more conciliatory approach.
I told him the Palestinians will not withdraw unless they are faced with a superior force. So Wasfi Attal said, "Are you dissenting?" I said no. This is our recommendation based on the intelligence available to us. His Majesty then intervened and adopted my recommendation.
On September 6, 1970, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or PFLP, forced the Jordanians' hand. It hijacked airliners belonging to Swissair and TWA and forced them to land at a disused runway in the Jordanian desert known as Dawson's Field. A third hijacking of an Israeli aircraft was thwarted mid-air, with one hijacker killed and the other captured. The plane landed in London and the hijacker, Layla Khalid, was taken into custody. Then, a PFLP member in Bahrain hijacked a British airliner and forced it to fly to Dawson's Field to join the other two hijacked planes. This spectacular act of air piracy was masterminded by a senior PFLP leader called Wadi' Haddad. The PFLP was born from the remnants of the Arab nationalist movement and headed by George Habash. It adopted a revolutionary Marxist doctrine. Wadi' Haddad was one of its co-founders. He had become a mastermind of airline hijacking. Beginning in 1968, Haddad had put his theories of revolutionary violence into practice by hijacking several Israeli and Western aircraft. But the multiple hijacking in 1970 was his most important feat to date. It required meticulous, even scientific, planning.
During the planning stages, Wadi' had sent engineers and surveyors to Dawson's Field. They had returned with a recommendation that the runway could handle modern jets.
وديع حداد حسيته حتى لما كان يحكي بنبرة حادة جدا.
وديع حداد spoke in sharp tone. He was obviously the man in charge. He told our chief of staff to pull the Jordanian troops back. He added that if we didn't comply, he would immediately blow up the planes within seconds. And he emphasized it in English by saying, "I mean it." I remember this clearly.
On September 12th, the PFLP removed the passengers and blew up the planes. With his hold on power rapidly disintegrating, King Hussein formed a military cabinet to finally deal with the anarchy in his country. The cabinet included intelligence officer Adnan Abu Audi.
When the military cabinet was formed on September 16th, I became Minister of Information. Wasfi Tel told me I would be the principal negotiator with the Palestinians. He said we would scare them into coming to the negotiation table. He never said anything about driving them out of Jordan.
Prime Minister Wasfi Tel's conciliatory approach did not win the day. The Jordanian army had other plans and deployed in full force onto the streets of Amman and Jordan's other cities. Vicious street battles soon erupted between army troops and Palestinian guerrillas. Fighting for their lives, the Fidayeen put up a stiff resistance in the face of a Jordanian army bent on exacting revenge for all the humiliations it had endured at the hands of the guerrillas. Casualties mounted, with the Palestinians estimating that around 4,000 people were killed, most of them civilians.
Civilians bear the brunt of urban warfare. We estimate that we lost around 950 fighters in Black September. And as for the civilians, Arafat exaggerates and says around 10,000 died. But the real figure is around 4,000 to 5,000 civilians killed.
In the region, Arab anger mounted at what was perceived as an attempt at liquidating the Palestinian liberation movement. Promises of military assistance to the Palestinians from Iraqi forces stationed in Jordan failed to materialize.
The Iraqi forces stationed in Jordan were not there to assist the Palestinians. Their duty was to aid the defense of Jordan against Israel. They didn't let the Palestinians down.
While Iraq kept its forces out of the fighting, the rival Ba'athist government in Damascus sought to intervene. Syria mobilized its armed forces and sent them into Jordan to support the PLO fighters. However, Syrian Defense Minister Hafez al-Assad refused to provide air cover to the advancing Syrian armor. King Hussein contemplated the unsavory option of requesting Israeli air support in a bid to beat back the Syrian advance.
First, the Israelis agreed to mobilize their forces to get the Syrians' attention. And that's all they did, actually. But they were ready to use their Air Force if requested. We managed to get the message back to them that the king doesn't want you to go in on the ground, we don't want you to, but mobilization's fine. Don't do anything until we say to. That is, get ready to act if necessary, but don't do anything. And as you probably know, this was a dramatic moment. King Hussein used his own air force, and Hafez al-Assad stood down the Syrian air force. He knew that the Israelis might go into action if the Syrian air force acted.
أنا لا أدري إذا كان هو فقط العامل اللي كان مؤثر على موقف حافظ الأسد هو عامل له علاقة.
I'm not sure what the determining factor was for Assad. Was it his relationship with the Jordanian regime? Was it internal power struggle within Syria? Or did it have anything to do with the threats he was getting from the Americans and the Israelis not to intervene? He was aware of all of this, and he may have used the circumstances to his advantage, because shortly afterwards he mounted a coup d'etat and came to power.
Assad's position at this time would be a precursor to his future split with Yasser Arafat. The Palestinians were now on the run. An Arab League delegation headed by Sudanese President Jafar Nimeri and including Kuwait's Defense Minister Sheikh Saad Abdullah al-Sabah arrived in the Jordanian capital and managed to whisk a besieged Yasser Arafat out to Cairo.
هنا جاءت اللجنة العربية.
The Arab delegation came to Amman. They dressed Arafat in Kuwaiti robes and smuggled him out. Sheikh Saad was a hero.
On September 27, 1970, Nasser brokered a ceasefire agreement which was signed by Arafat and King Hussein. The following day, Nasser died, leaving the Palestinians without their benefactor. Arafat and Hussein signed a further agreement regulating the presence of Palestinian fighters in Jordan, but some Palestinians refused to accept the deal. The agreement collapsed, and in July 1971, King Hussein continued his attack. The Jordanian army overran the remaining PLO bases and positions, forcing the Palestinians to capitulate. Some Palestinian fighters chose to give themselves up to Israeli forces across the River Jordan rather than surrender to what they viewed as a grim fate at the hands of the Jordanians. Henceforth, the Palestinians would term the events that led to their expulsion from Jordan as Black September. The PLO had held sway over large areas of Jordan. Now it was transformed into a broken movement in search of a sanctuary. One of Fatah's leaders, Salah Khalaf, otherwise known as Abu Iyad, was determined that the PLO remain a force to be reckoned with despite the defeat in Jordan.
فقال أنتم أمام مهمة صعبة للغاية.
Abu Iyad gathered a group of us and said, "You have to prove to the world that the revolution has survived. We must show the world the long arm of the revolution."
Abu Iyad announced the birth of a new group, which came to be known as the Black September Organization, taking its name from the conflict with Jordan. In November 1971, at an Arab Defense Ministers' Council in Cairo, Black September struck its first blow. The target was this man, Jordanian Prime Minister Wasfi al-Tal, whom Palestinians accused of responsibility for their expulsion from Jordan.
قررنا احنا الشباب يعني احنا نفسنا المجموعة نفسنا.
Our group decided to assassinate Wasfi al-Tal by any means possible. There were 4 of us in the hit team. I was under the command of Abu Iyad and Abu Hassan Salam. They ordered us to go to Egypt. It was Sunday, November 28, 1971. 3 of us waited for Wasfi al-Tal in the lobby of the Cairo Sheraton. As soon as he entered the hotel, we opened fire on him. We shot him 14 times. Then we gave ourselves up. That was the plan. We were to kill him and then go to trial to gain media exposure.
The role that Yasser Arafat played in forming Black September and planning its operations has always been open to conjecture. Today, Al Jazeera can finally reveal the truth.
كان أبو عمار مطلعاً على كل شيء.
Arafat knew everything. He wasn't a guitar player. He was the leader of the revolution.
كان يشتغل الأخ أبو إياد لا بتفاهم مع الأخ أبو عمار.
Abu Iyad used to act in concert with Arafat. When we were preparing for an operation in Jordan, Arafat came to our camp but didn't meet with us. Then Abu Iyad came by helicopter and met with us while Arafat was in another room in the camp. He didn't want to meet with us, but later on he did visit us.
The assassination of Tell was just the opening shot of the Black September organization. A more dramatic operation was carried out the following year at an event chosen by the Palestinians because they knew the whole world would be watching. At the 1972 Munich Olympics, Black September operatives infiltrated the Olympic Village, killing 2 Israeli athletes and seizing another 11 as hostages. The kidnappers demanded a prisoner swap and a plane to fly them out of West Germany. Holding the hostages at gunpoint, the kidnappers were transported by bus to an airbase and then flown by helicopter to an airfield, where 2 of them were shot dead by German snipers when they went to inspect the aircraft. German authorities claim another of the kidnappers then lobbed a hand grenade into the helicopter, killing all of the Israeli hostages. To this day, one of the principal planners of the operation remains unrepentant.
كلهم ضباط جيش، احنا قتلنا ضباط جيش بملابس رياضية.
The hostages were all army officers. We killed only army officers who were dressed in sports tracksuits. The Israelis kill unarmed civilians. We did not murder children or unarmed civilians, but 2 months before Munich, the Israelis bombed the school, killing children. So the world must have a more balanced outlook.
Further acts of violence ensued, grabbing the world headlines. In March of 1973, Black September gunmen stormed a diplomatic reception at the Saudi Arabian embassy in Khartoum. A siege ensued, which ended when the gunmen executed the American ambassador to Sudan, his deputy, and the Belgian chargé d'affaires. A declassified US State Department cable stated the operation was carried out with the full knowledge and authority of Yasser Arafat. The report also stated,
one of the primary goals of the operation was to strike at the United States because of its efforts to achieve a Middle East peace settlement, which many Arabs believe would be inimical to Palestinian interests.
By the end of 1973, the PLO leaders had decided that the Black September organization had outlived its usefulness. In the aftermath of the October 1973 war, a new political climate had emerged. Yasser Arafat now recognized that there was a limit to what military action could achieve, and that the Palestinians must present an acceptable political program to the world if their liberation movement was to achieve its goals. Defeat in Jordan and a series of headline-grabbing acts of violence had ensured the survival of the Palestinian revolution, but damaged it in the eyes of the world. Arafat decided that from now on, the gun would only support but not supplant his political agenda. But this view was not shared by other Palestinian factions, nor did it prove realistic, as the PLO was soon drawn into a civil war in a neighboring Arab country.
The time had come for the PLO to seek a new and peaceful solution. Arafat pursuing a path of diplomacy. But what was to turn their agreed withdrawal from Lebanon into one of the most horrific civilian massacres of modern times?
Women killed, children killed. We couldn't believe our eyes.
Chronicling the turbulent story of the struggle for a Palestinian homeland. PLO, History of a Revolution, on Al Jazeera.
Every generation has a higher purpose. Ours is to stay home.
Al Jazeera World goes on a roller coaster journey in Iran and discovers how football can empower a refugee community with self-belief and identity.
I'd like to prove to the world that Afghans have talent. I will be able to prove myself to my townsmen, friends, and myself. We will be able to play beside each other.
Afghan United on Al Jazeera.
A policy imposed decades ago.
No pregnant woman thought that she could selectively kill girls and have only boys.
Changing demographics across Asia with far-reaching consequences.
You're creating a pool of socially disadvantaged young men.
So you had this system where people at every level were being given money to agree to sterilization, or money to get other people to agree to sterilization.
Al Jazeera examines the politics of population control.
The way disease outbreaks have impacted dense urban areas, like during the flu pandemic in the early 1900s, has played a role in how our cities look and run. Urban planners reacted to that flu and other outbreaks, changing how cities were zoned and led to updated infrastructure, like ventilation and improved sanitation. But after what's been learned from pandemics and their influences on our skylines and way of life, we also need to keep pace and adapt.
It's easy to assume that cities are fertile ground for spreading viruses and diseases. Millions living, working, and commuting in such tight conditions. But one expert says it's about much more than just density. It's about how all this was put together and how it's run.
This is Al Jazeera.
Hello and welcome. I'm Peter Dobby. You're watching the News Hour live from Doha. Coming up in the next 60 minutes. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it has successfully launched the country's first military satellite. More heavy rain and flash flooding turns the southern Yemeni city of Aden into a disaster area. Spain's parliament prepares to extend its nationwide lockdown, but the Prime Minister says an end is in sight. South Africa deploys 98% of its army to enforce coronavirus lockdown measures.
And in sport, one of the Premier League's main broadcast partners wants to block the Saudi-led takeover of Newcastle United. Qatar's beIN Sports says the Saudi government allows an illegal channel to steal games and it's threatening the league's financial future.
Iran says it's launched its first military satellite into orbit. It is likely to increase tensions with the US. In the past, Washington has blamed Iran of using its space program as a cover for missile development. Iranian leaders deny that. Iran has spent a decade trying to improve its rocket technology. It fired its first successful satellite into orbit in 2009, but in recent months, it's had several failed launches. The latest came in February when Iran failed to put its Zafar-1 communications satellite into orbit. Last year, it had 3 failures, including a rocket explosion in August. The United States called those actions provocative, but Iran has maintained that its satellite program did not have a military component. Let's get the latest on this. Al Jazeera's Zain Basravi joins us live here on the News Hour out of Tehran. Zain, what more do we know about the launch?
Well, we know that this is the first time that Iran's government, its military, has called this the launch of a military satellite. This morning, we heard news that came as a surprise to most Iranians and to most of the world, that Iran had launched this military satellite, the Noor, over 400 kilometers into Earth's thermosphere. Now, anytime the country's Revolutionary Guard do something like this, every time the country's military flexes, it is generally to project some strength. And more likely than not, it's safe to assume that the United States is the target audience for that flexing. In the immediately following the successful launch of this satellite into orbit, we heard from the commander of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, Major General Hossein Salami, and he made a couple of very, very specific points. He said that it's necessary for a powerful military like the IRGC to possess specifically military-use satellite technology. He also said that no Army's defense plans are complete without the strategic advantage that satellites can provide. And I'll read you a direct quote from his statement. He said, "Today we can monitor the world from space, and it means a boost for the strategic data that the IRGC has access to. Putting the satellite in orbit is a technological advantage for battlefield intelligence." So a clear message from the commander of the IRGC there that this is a military satellite and will be used to strengthen the IRGC's forces in the field on the ground.
What's it going to be used for?
Well, we're likely to see this being used largely for things like reconnaissance, for the navigation for military forces in the field, likely to gather intelligence and things of that nature. But it has to be said, Iran's satellite program, its space program, has been multi-pronged in the past. We can't get away from the fact that there are financial applications here as well. Telecommunications is a major, it uses satellites as a major form of its sort of capacity to provide data and bandwidth for users on the ground. Iran has become now one of only a dozen countries with an indigenous launch program to be able to put satellites in orbit, elbowing its way, despite economic isolation, into what is essentially an elite club. And we are likely to see the IRGC as well as Iran's government try to benefit from this from a financial point of view as well. It can say that we can put our own rockets and satellites in space. We can do so for other companies in other countries.
And just to be clear, Zain, briefly, when we talk about it being indigenous as part of a broader program, I guess, did they buy it off a shelf or off somebody else's shelf, or did they make it themselves from scratch?
Well, what we're looking at now is Iran's pride in what it calls its own resilient domestic economy. Now, Iran has been working for some time on trying to make sure that it can sort of go on its own in terms of developing these types of technological advancements. It's something Major General Hossein Salami also addressed, saying that this is also an example of Iran being able to accomplish complicated, advanced technological feats that give it a bright horizon. Now, whether or not there was cooperation from other countries, Iran's government, Iran's military, certainly taking the credit for this successful satellite launch.
Zain, thanks very much. A disaster area has been declared in Yemen's southern port city of Aden after it was hit by flash flooding. The Prime Minister is asking for foreign help. 8 people, including children, were killed when heavy rain inundated streets and homes. Here's Charlotte Bellis.
It was a desperate attempt to stop this couple being swept away. Strangers leapt into a street in central Aden, fighting to pull them free of the current. It is rainy season in Yemen, but with neglected infrastructure, the water makes its own path through the city, turning roads into rivers. Many were caught out and had to be saved from their vehicles. These boys trying to cheer up a woman they rescued by singing to her. Compounding the trauma is that this also happened a month ago. Then the UN had to bulldoze thousands of tons of rubble and mud off the streets. Almost 5,000 families were displaced. The water also harbours an invisible danger. Yemen is battling a cholera outbreak, a disease spread through water. Some 400 kilometres north, in the capital Sana'a, residents are salvaging what they can from floods a week ago. Heavy winds and rain killed 7 people, injured dozens, and damaged 16 refugee camps in the neighbouring governorate of Marib.
The heavy rain destroyed everything. We weren't expecting it, and it came from the mountains and swept everything away without warning. The rain took our clothes, buses, everything in its path.
And yet, there is a potentially more ominous disaster on the horizon. Yemen has had just 1 case of coronavirus. The UN has warned it will be catastrophic if it catches hold here. Only half of Yemen's medical facilities are functional, the population is acutely malnourished, and about 80% or 24 million people need aid to survive. Multinational companies, including Tetra Pak and Unilever, are donating tens of thousands of virus testing kits to Yemen. The first shipment will arrive next week. A devastated health system and neglected infrastructure are symptoms of Yemen's 5-year civil war. Whether it will continue is under negotiation.
We've all noted the continued violence what Mr. Griffiths is doing is trying to get the parties to agree to a nationwide ceasefire, a sustainable nationwide ceasefire. Those discussions are ongoing, obviously in challenging circumstances, but that's what he's trying to do.
Challenging circumstances for all, but for Yemenis, a resolution can't come soon enough. Charlotte Ballas, Al Jazeera.
Okay, let's go back to that earlier story. Iran saying it successfully launched its first ever military satellite. Joining us here on the news now, Mustafa Koscheshem. He's an Iranian affairs analyst. He joins us from Tehran. Mustafa Koscheshem, how can Iran afford to do this? You and I have had several conversations over the past year or so talking about what a bad state the economy is in, how much the country is suffering because of US-led sanctions. So where's the financing coming from?
Thanks for having me. Well, as a matter of fact, this is a miracle of work in Iran. Actually, it costs sometimes 100 or sometimes 1,000 of a similar job in a rival country, in a Western country. This is nothing new, of course. This is the product of 20 years of hard work by the civil space agency, as well as the IRGC and the Iranian scientists, as well as academic centers like Science University. So they've been working hard in order to, send the satellite into space. At the first time, several years ago, they launched, they had a test run, and they could place a mock satellite in space very successfully. But the next two efforts by the civil sector failed, unfortunately, at a time when the launcher was separating from the satellite. The satellite was not placed into the correct orbit, and it fell down. But this time, the IRGC itself has embarked on doing that, and this has been a major breakthrough, actually pushing the defense, not just the defense, but also the civil sector, a lot forward in area of science, because this satellite is not just going to be working for the military purpose.
Okay, but for the military, this makes the military actually and really much more powerful than they were, and that's the thing surely that will raise eyebrows in Washington and, of course, in Jerusalem.
Sure. This is a major breakthrough, as I said earlier. This satellite is going to provide two, purposes. It's a multi-purpose satellite, actually, for both the civil sector as well as the military. But in the military sector, it will help Iran in wars of IT. It will help Iran in wars of intelligence and information against enemies. But more importantly, it will help Iran with its ballistic, cruise, and drone missions very much. It will make IRGC and the Iranian military forces independent of any foreign assistance with regard to satellite navigation and GPS systems. It also helps the country. This is probably the most important achievement of the day for the IRGC and Iran, that it will help Iran with drawing its comprehensive defense plan strategy. As a matter of fact, those countries that do not have a military satellite in the space, they fail to draw such a strategy. The comprehensive defense plan needs, access to space. And this is their main goal and objective, and, the main achievement of the day for the IRGC.
So Iran has, in effect, joined a rather exclusive club. The symbolism of this will not be lost on anyone outside of Iran, indeed across the Middle East, across the region, and as far as the United States, and I guess Europe as well. What happens if this, in effect, increases the tensions between the United States and the leadership in Tehran?
Well, I believe we have all witnessed in action in the last 4 decades that more pressures by the United States would drive Tehran to move forward in all areas of science and technology. Iran was under much sanction, growing and crippling sanctions when it achieved this achievement. and could successfully launch the satellite and place it into the orbit. Iran was under harsh sanctions and crippling, cruel sanctions when it developed its nuclear technology and mastered the nuclear technology. So it seems to me that the sanctions are driving Tehran forward and making Tehran more resolved on the path towards development, independence, and standing firm against Israel and the United States. If they had, provided Tehran with lots of Air Force fighter jets, like what they did at the time of Shah, I don't think that, at the time of war between Iran and Iraq, if they supplied, spare parts and planes, I don't think that Tehran would be driven towards the path of developing ballistic missile technology. So, as a matter of fact, the pressures are backfiring on Washington and its allies.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Mustafa Koscheshem, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Lots more ground still to cover for you here on the News Hour, including, we'll tell you why Nigeria's hospitals are suddenly seeing an influx of rich patients. As many of us stay at home, the environment's getting a bit of a break, just in time for the 50th Earth Day. We'll tell you more coming up. And in the sports news, two of the NFL's top stars are set to be reunited. Andy will have all the details later in the sports news. The South African president has announced a $26 billion rescue package to deal with the economic impact of COVID-19. Cyril Ramaphosa unveiled what he called an extraordinary budget in a special address to the nation. About $2.6 billion will go to the poor in the form of financial grants. South Africa is under a 5-week lockdown. It has more than 3,400 infections and 58 deaths so far. Meanwhile, more than 70,000 South African soldiers, nearly the entire standing army, are being deployed to enforce the lockdown. They will join nearly 2,300 personnel already out on the streets. Let's bring in Famida Miller, who's in Johannesburg. What kind of areas are they going into, Famida?
Well, Peter, we haven't been given detail from the government yet as to where exactly the army will be deployed. But to give you some idea, we're in Kagiso at the moment, in the west of Johannesburg. And it's areas like this where so far those 2,000 troops you mentioned have been deployed and are monitoring movements here. They're patrolling the streets. We've not seen any here in Kagiso, but that is also one of the criticisms from many members of the South African public, is that there's a disproportionate use of the army in certain areas. If you go to the north of Johannesburg and the suburbs, you won't see police, you won't see the army. And so far, we understand that the concern from the government is trying to monitor and enforce the lockdown in areas like this one. Just behind us, there's a supermarket where there's a queue. Clearly, the supermarket is trying to restrict the number of people coming in. But outside, in that queue, there's very little social distancing. Now, earlier today, the Minister of Defense spoke on radio saying that the aim of putting more soldiers on the street would be to enforce these very strict restrictions. And at the same time, in this area, we've seen police patrol, and they've done nothing to move anybody on the street away. There are dozens of pedestrians walking up and down. There's a normal amount of traffic. So the implementation of the lockdown clearly for the government is one that has not been easy, depending on where you are in South Africa.
Why has the social distancing message not got through to people? Is it that they can't get the message across, or is it that people are just ignoring it?
Well, the government has done a lot to educate people as far as possible. And this was also mentioned by the Defense Minister earlier today, that this additional deployment of up to 70,000 soldiers would be to enforce the lockdown and also create more awareness. The fear really from the government is that South Africa will reach a peak in infections and potentially deaths, perhaps August or September. So when it comes down to that information trickling down to people, there is a certain level of people just ignoring the guidelines and not perhaps understanding the gravity of the situation or potentially what could happen in South Africa. Peter, there's also been some concern about the conduct of the army, in that they've been criticized for having a heavy hand. We do know at least one man was killed in the Johannesburg township of Alexander, allegedly after being beaten by soldiers. The army has said that they're investigating this incident. They've launched an inquiry. But this is the kind of difficulty the South African National Defence Force is facing in trying to implement this lockdown, and at the same time facing the criticism that it is in a very tricky situation for the government.
Famida, thanks very much. Well, the global pandemic is driving the rich in Nigeria and the powerful there to local hospitals that they've been avoiding for years. Doctors are reporting a sharp increase in the number of government officials and business leaders seeking treatment. Ahmed Idris has more now from the capital, Abuja.
Ngozi Enonwa Ejedumo is a cancer survivor who regularly travels abroad for treatment. Her next appointment is in India in May. But because of the global pandemic, she fears she will have to miss it. She says the local hospitals here in Nigeria don't offer any hope.
If you find out that there's something going on with you right now, you can't go to the hospital because they're already short-staffed. You can't go to the hospital, and even if you decide to call in, it will not be considered an emergency. So whether you like it or not, you have to wait till the lockdown is over before anything can be done. Even those on radiotherapy treatments, a lot of their treatments have been cancelled.
Her concern is echoed by many in the country.
There's a lot of confusion because you can't self-medicate on a lot of illnesses. So there's just a lot of fear and confusion.
Thousands of Nigerians regularly seek medical attention in other countries every year because of the poor state of the public healthcare system here. The travel restrictions imposed by countries around the world has now forced many, including the rich and the powerful, to stay home and rely on the same health system they neglected for decades.
Whereas you had a clear dichotomy on just the rich to lower class using these hospitals, right, the public hospitals initially, now you have an added on effect of more persons now having to utilize resources for obvious reasons because you cannot travel.
The increase in the number of people using local hospitals is adding stress to a system that's already in a bad state. Many here hope the pandemic will force public officials to focus on improving Nigeria's healthcare system. An estimated $1 billion is spent by Nigerians on overseas medical treatment every year, including government officials. In 2017, Nigeria's president spent about 20 weeks in hospitals in the United Kingdom. Although government promised to address the problems in the health system here, nothing much has improved. Some Nigerians say they will avoid local hospitals for now, not because they have alternatives, but because they fear doing so will put them at a greater risk for COVID-19. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Abuja.
The Spanish Parliament is set to vote on a government proposal today to extend the nationwide lockdown until May the 9th. Madrid has already started easing some restrictions. Children can go for walks as of next week, and some factory and construction workers have returned to their jobs already. That happened last week. Nearly 208,000 people have contracted the virus across Spain, and at least 21,000 have died. Marta Herrero joins us live now from Madrid. Marta, this vote, how do we think it's going to go?
Well, today's Spanish Prime Minister has announced this third extension of a state of emergency lockdown until May 9th in the Spanish Congress. This extension has been the most controversial as it's completely linked to the decision announced yesterday from the Spanish government allowing children under 14 years old to go with their parents to the groceries, to the chemists, or to the banks. This prompted a huge criticism in all the sectors of Spanish society, political parties, NGOs, parents associations, saying that it was crazy, mad, taking this decision after 6 weeks of lockdown, just allowing children under 14 years old going to these places that were very risky of contagious of COVID-19.
सारा पैसा घर ले जा रहे हैं, लेकिन आपने किस कानून के तहत 20% रियायत की? आप तमाम नोटिफिकेशन वापस लें, हम दरख्वास्त निपटा देते हैं। कानून बनाएं। एडिशनल एडवोकेट जनरल सिंध ने 1 माह की मोहलत मांग ली। अदालत ने 3 स्कूलों के लिए 20% रियायत के खिलाफ हुक्म इम्तना में तौसी कर दी। आइंदा समाअत 19 अप्रैल को होगी। स्कूल इंतजामिया पर वादे कर दिया गया कि फीस अदा न करने पर किसी बच्चे को निकाला नहीं जाएगा। इरफानुल हक, समा, कराची।
चेयरमैन और प्राइवेट स्कूल एसोसिएशन तारिक शाह ने वालिदैन से स्कूलों से ताउन करने की अपील कर दी। समा से गुफ्तगू में कहा, यकीन रखें कोई स्कूल नाजायज फीस नहीं लेगा। अदालती फैसले के बाद फीसों को एडजस्ट कर लिया जाएगा।
जो भी कोर्ट का डिसीजन होगा वो स्कूल्स फॉलो करेंगे, लेकिन हमने वॉलंटरली जो है ये ऑफर किया है क्योंकि माँ बाप भी परेशान है और स्कूल्स भी परेशान है क्योंकि स्कूल्स के अखराजात पेरेंट की फीस देने से चलते हैं। तो हम यही रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे कि अभी पेरेंट जो है ना वो जो स्कूल अपनी पॉलिसी लेके चल रहा है उसको फॉलो कर लें, फिर आगे जाके पेरेंट भी वही है और स्कूल भी वही है। जो भी डिफरेंसेस क्रिएट होंगे फीस के अंदर वो एडजस्ट कर दिए जाएंगे। अगर किसी ने फुल फीस पे की होगी तो अगर स्कूल बाद में एडजस्ट कर देगा, करना चाहेगा, या कोर्ट के ऑर्डर्स या गवर्नमेंट के ऑर्डर्स जो भी होंगे, जो भी सिनेरियो आगे जाके क्रिएट होगा उसके हिसाब से एडजस्ट कर दिया जाएगा। तो पेरेंट की फीस किसी तरह भी जो है वो स्कूल नाजायज नहीं लेगा।
वापस आएंगे एक ब्रेक के बाद।
समा के साथ रहेंगे।
इस रमजान टैंग से दीजिए अपने सब्र को एक ताजगी भरा घूंट। टैंग, एक ताजगी भरा घूंट।
अपनी जैज सिम दोबारा लगाएं, *551# मिलाएं और पाएं 3000 जैज मिनट्स, 3000 SMS और 6 GB डेटा बिल्कुल मुफ्त। डरना नहीं, बचना है, दुनिया को बता दो।
मेरा नाम ना तो अफसोस है ना ही दुख हुआ। मेरा नाम है आमिर और मुझे आपका अफसोस नहीं साथ चाहिए। आमिर और उस जैसे सैकड़ों बच्चों के मुफ्त इलाज के लिए कैन नाउ लिव लाइन, क्योंकि हर पैक की खरीदारी पर शौकत खानम मेमोरियल कैंसर हॉस्पिटल को 5 रुपए अतिया किए जाएंगे। कैंसर का इलाज बात नहीं, साथ।
टाइगर दे 20% आयरन और जिंक की हिदायत।
टाइगर एनर्जी बिस्किट्स, एनर्जी भरा डोज हर रोज।
ऑलफिक्स इस्तेमाल करें।
ज्यादा सही तरीके से चलो नन्हे एक्सप्लोरर्स, हम आपके साथ हैं। वाओ, मसालेदार चिकन टिक्का
मेरा फेवरेट। मिर्चों से मसूड़ों में जलन हो तो कैसे खाऊं?
मसूड़ों में जलन का बेहतरीन हल कोलगेट हर्बल, जिसमें शामिल नीम, यूकलिप्टस, लौंग और पुदीना मसूड़ों में ठंडक पहुंचाए, इन्हें सेहतमंद बनाए। अब जो चाहो वो खाओ। कोलगेट हर्बल, मजबूत दांत, सेहतमंद मसूड़े नेचुरली।
पता है, आयरन और जिंक की कमी की वजह से पाकिस्तान में 44% के करीब बच्चे रहते हैं थकन से बेहाल। इनको दे टाइगर एनर्जी बिस्किट्स, जो दे 20% आयरन और जिंक की हिदायत और बढ़ाए इम्यूनिटी।
टाइगर एनर्जी बिस्किट्स, एनर्जी भरा डोज हर रोज।
एहसास चाहिए, आपका साथ चाहिए। अपने ज़कात और अतियात सुंदस फाउंडेशन को दें।
PTCL अनलिमिटेड इंटरनेट पूरे घर के लिए, तो अभी 1218 पे कॉल करके ऑर्डर करें।
आज रूह अफ़ज़ा दुनिया भर में हमारी रिवायतों का सफीर है। हमारा फख्र, हमारी पहचान, मशरूब मशरक़, रूह अफ़ज़ा, रमजान मुबारक।
पता है, आयरन और जिंक की कमी की वजह से पाकिस्तान में 44% के करीब बच्चे रहते हैं थकन से बेहाल। इनको दे टाइगर एनर्जी बिस्किट्स, जो दे 20% आयरन और जिंक की हिदायत और बढ़ाए इम्यूनिटी।
टाइगर एनर्जी बिस्किट्स, एनर्जी भरा डोज हर रोज।
हर फैमिली डिफरेंट कैरेक्टर्स का मिक्सचर होती है। फैमिली के इस मिक्सचर से मिलती है वो ही स्ट्रेंथ जो मिले टपाल फैमिली मिक्सचर के स्ट्रॉन्ग कप से। टपाल फैमिली मिक्सचर, मेरी फैमिली मेरी स्ट्रेंथ।
कोरोना वायरस की वबा के बायस घरों तक महदूद अफराद तफक्कुरात और जहनी इंतशार से बचें। मस्बत और तामीरी सोच के जरिए जहनी दबाव और इंतशार से दूर रहा जा सकता है। दिन के औकात को मुख्तलिफ हिस्सों में तकसीम करें और अपनी मसरूफियात की फहरिस्त मरतब करें। मुफीद और सेहत बख्श खुराक इस्तेमाल करें। पूरी नींद लें। घर में रहते हुए हल्की फुल्की वर्जिश को अपना मामूल बनाएं। टीवी देखने के औकात में कमी लाएं और सोशल मीडिया का बेजा इस्तेमाल।
So here's the thing, last month मैंने अपने सारे expenses online freelancing से निकाले and here's how you can do the same। यार कुछ साल पहले हालात बहुत बुरे थे, कोई बिजनेस करना था लेकिन पैसे नहीं थे, तो फिर मैंने डिजिटल मार्केटिंग सीख ली और अपनी सर्विसेज ऑनलाइन ऑफर करना शुरू कर दी and that changed everything। So if you also want to make a lot of money through freelancing, then my recommendation would be to learn digital marketing through IDM Pakistan. And you can start right now by clicking below for a free trial class. Okay, back to work.
قالوا ليس عن هذا نسألك. قال فيوسف نبي الله ابن خليل الله. قالوا ليس عن هذا نسألك. قال فعن معادن العرب تسألوني؟ قالوا نعم. قال فخيارهم في الجاهلية خيارهم في الإسلام إذا فقهوا. وفي رواية قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تجدون الناس معادن خيارهم في الجاهلية خيارهم في الإسلام إذا فقهوا. وتجدون خير الناس في هذا الشأن أشدهم له كراهية حتى يقع فيه. وتجدون شر الناس ذا الوجهين الذي يأتي هؤلاء بوجه وهؤلاء بوجه. وفي رواية قبل أن يقع فيه. أخرجه البخاري ومسلم. وقوله معادن العرب أصولها التي ينسبون إليها ويتفاخرون بها. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قلت يا رسول الله من أسعد الناس بشفاعتك يوم القيامة؟ قال لقد ظننت ألا يسألني عن هذا أول منك لما رأيت من حرصك على الحديث. أسعد الناس بشفاعتي يوم القيامة من قال لا إله إلا الله خالصا مخلصا من قلبه. أخرجه البخاري. وقوله أول منك أي قبلك. وعن صهيب رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال عجبا لأمر المؤمن إن أمره كله له خير وليس ذلك لأحد إلا للمؤمن. إن أصابته سراء شكر فكان خيرا له وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له. أخرجه مسلم. وعن وهب بن منبه رحمه الله قيل له أليس لا إله إلا الله مفتاح الجنة؟ قال بلى ولكن ليس مفتاح إلا له أسنان فإن جئت بمفتاح له أسنان فتح لك وإلا لم يفتح لك. أخرجه البخاري. عن أبي بكر الصديق رضي الله عنه قال نظرت إلى أقدام المشركين ونحن في الغار وهم على رؤوسنا فقلت يا رسول الله لو أن أحدهم نظر تحت قدميه لأبصرنا. فقال ما ظنك يا أبا بكر باثنين الله ثالثهما؟ متفق عليه. وعن أنس رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من قال يعني إذا خرج من بيته بسم الله توكلت على الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله، يقال له: هديت وكفيت ووقيت، وتنحى عنه الشيطان. وزاد أبو داود رحمة الله تعالى عليه فيقول: يعني الشيطان لشيطان آخر: كيف لك برجل قد هدي وكفي ووقي؟ وعن أنس رضي الله عنه قال: كان أخوان على عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، وكان أحدهما يأتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم والآخر يحترف، فشكى المحترف أخاه للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: لعلك ترزق به. رواه الترمذي بإسناد صحيح على شرط مسلم. ومعنى يحترف يعني يكتسب ويتسبب. وعن أبي عمرو وقيل أبي عمرة سفيان بن عبد الله رضي الله عنه قلت: يا رسول الله، قل لي في الإسلام قولا لا أسأل عنه أحدا غيرك. قال: قل آمنت بالله ثم استقم. رواه مسلم. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: قاربوا وسددوا، واعلموا أنه لن ينجو أحد منكم بعمله. قالوا: ولا أنت يا رسول الله؟ قال: ولا أنا إلا أن يتغمدني الله برحمة منه وفضل. رواه مسلم. والمقاربة القصد الذي لا غلو فيه ولا تقصير، والسداد الاستقامة والإصابة. ويتغمدني يعني يلبسني ويسترني. قال العلماء: معنى الاستقامة لزوم طاعة الله تعالى. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال: قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: كلمتان خفيفتان على اللسان ثقيلتان في الميزان حبيبتان إلى الرحمن، سبحان الله وبحمده، سبحان الله العظيم. رواه البخاري ومسلم. وعن أبي ذر رضي الله عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: ألا أخبرك بأحب الكلام إلى الله؟ قلت: يا رسول الله، أخبرني بأحب الكلام إلى الله. فقال: إن أحب الكلام إلى الله سبحان الله وبحمده. رواه مسلم. وفي رواية له أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سئل: أي الكلام أفضل؟ قال: ما اصطفى الله لملائكته أو لعباده، سبحان الله وبحمده. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: ومن قال سبحان الله وبحمده في يوم 100 مرة غفرت له ذنوبه وإن كانت مثل زبد البحر. رواه مسلم. وعن مصعب بن سعد قال: حدثني أبي قال: كنا عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: أيعجز أحدكم أن يكسب كل يوم 1000 حسنة؟ فسأله سائل من جلسائه: كيف يكسب أحدنا 1000 حسنة؟ قال: يسبح 100 تسبيحة فيكتب له 1000 حسنة، أو يحط عنه 1000 خطيئة. رواه مسلم. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: لأن أقول سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر أحب إلي مما طلعت عليه الشمس. رواه مسلم. وعن سمرة بن جندب رضي الله عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: أحب الكلام إلى الله 4: سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر، لا يضرك بأيهن بدأت. رواه مسلم. وعن أبي مالك الأشعري رضي الله عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: الطهور شطر الإيمان، والحمد لله تملأ الميزان، وسبحان الله والحمد لله تملأان أو تملأ ما بين السماء والأرض. والصلاة نور، والصدقة برهان، والصبر ضياء، والقرآن حجة لك أو عليك. كل الناس يغدو فبائع نفسه فمعتقها أو موبقها. رواه مسلم. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن رسول الله صلى الله
I actually was very lucky because I found a job really fast.
Dr. Sai's being really helpful. He encouraged me to apply for the job.
With the help of Toronto School of Management, I have now my family.
It has opened doors for me into the corporate world of finance.
All the things that I was studying at school, I was using it there. I'm very more independent.
You learn so much.
Lecturing is a real life experience. Believe it will happen.
넌 내 안에 번져와 어둠 속에서 널 찾은 순간 네 목소리는 날 따뜻하게 웃어 내 온기 느낄 때마다 소리 없이 스며와 텅 빈 심장에 내 맘에 너를 채워가 아무 생각도 없네 너로 물들네 이대로 날 가리고 있죠 나의 모든 게 너로부터 살아나 널 영원히 놓지 않을 거야 난 이제 다시 잡을 네 손을 놓지만 너 없이 남은 의미가 없으니까 I swear to my moon 다처럼 매일 변하는 이런 맹세하지만 받지 않을 마지막 입맞춤이 아직 가라면은 말 그려도 너로 말 그려도 너로 나의 네가 또 나의 네가 영원히 함께 할 수 있도록 I swear to my moon 널 잃었던 맘의 얼룩 보기 싫은 흉터 다시 보지 않아도 되긴 너로 다 묻으려줘 이제 나를 그 의미 깨달았어 나 애매 나의 묻어린 세상 속 You're the reason why I'm alive 채워줘가 텅빈 심장에 내 맘에 너를 채워가 아무 생각 없네 너가 물드네 baby 이대로 날 die with you 나의 모든 게 너로부터 살아나 널 영원히 놓지 않을 거야 난 이제 다시 잡은 네 손에 놓지만 널 없이 아무 의미가 없으니까 I'm straight up out of mud oh I 해처럼 매일 변하네
إذا تتلى عليهم آيات الرحمن خروا سجدا فخلف من بعدهم خلف أضاعوا الصلاة فخلف من بعدهم خلف أضاعوا الصلاة واتبعوا الشهوات فسوف يلقون غيا إلا من تاب وآمن وعمل صالحا فأولئك يدخلون الجنة ولا يظلمون شيئا جنات عدن التي وعد الرحمن عباده بالغيب إنه كان وعده مأتيا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا إلا سلاما ولهم رزقهم فيها بكرة وعشيا تلك الجنة التي نورث من عبادنا من كان تقيا تلك الجنة التي نورث من عبادنا من كان تقيا تلك الجنة التي نورث من عبادنا من كان تقيا وما نتنزل إلا بأمر ربك له ما بين أيدينا وما خلفنا وما بين ذلك وما كان ربك نسيا رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما فاعبده واصطبر لعبادته هل تعلم له سميا ويقول الإنسان الإنسان أإذا ما مت لسوف أخرج حيا ويقول الإنسان أإذا ما مت لسوف أخرج حيا أولا يذكر الإنسان أنا خلقناه من قبل ولم يك شيئا فوربك لنحشرنهم والشياطين ثم لنحضرنهم حول جهنم جثيا ثم لننزعن من كل شيعة أيهم أشد على الرحمن عتيا ثم لنحن أعلم بالذين هم أولى بها صليا وإن منكم إلا واردها كان على ربك حتما مقضيا ثم ننجي الذين اتقوا ونذر الظالمين فيها جثيا وإذا تتلى عليهم آياتنا بينات قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أي الفريقين خير مقاما وأحسن نديا وكم أهلكنا قبلهم من قرن هم أحسن أثاثا ورئيا قل من كان في الضلالة فليمدد له الرحمن مدا حتى إذا رأوا ما يوعدون إما العذاب وإما الساعة فسيعلمون من هو شر مكانا وأضعف جندا ويزيد الله الذين اهتدوا هدى والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير مردا أفرأيت الذي كفر بآياتنا وقال لأوتين مالا وولدا أطلع الغيب أم اتخذ عند الرحمن عهدا كلا سنكتب ما يقول ونمد له من العذاب مدا ونرثه ما يقول ويأتينا فردا واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة ليكونوا لهم عزا كلا سيكفرون بعبادتهم ويكونون عليهم ضدا ألم تر أنا أرسلنا الشياطين على الكافرين تؤزهم أزا فلا تعجل عليهم إنما نعد لهم عدا يوم نحشر المتقين المتقين إلى الرحمن وفدا يوم نحشر المتقين إلى الرحمن وفدا ونسوق المجرمين إلى جهنم وردا لا يملكون الشفاعة إلا من اتخذ عند الرحمن عهدا وقالوا اتخذ الرحمن ولدا لقد جئتم شيئا إدا تكاد السماوات يتفطرن منه وتنشق الأرض وتخر الجبال هدا أن دعوا للرحمن ولدا وما ينبغي للرحمن أن يتخذ ولدا إن كل من في السماوات والأرض إلا آتي الرحمن عبدا لقد أحصاهم وعدهم عدا وكلهم آتيه يوم القيامة فردا إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات سيجعل لهم الرحمن ودا فإنما يسرناه بلسانك لتبشر به المتقين وتنذر به قوما لدا وكم أهلكنا قبلهم من قرن هل تحس منهم من أحد أو تسمع لهم ركزا واذكر في الكتاب إبراهيم إنه كان صديقا نبيا إذ قال لأبيه يا أبت لم تعبد ما لا يسمع ولا يبصر ولا يغني عنك شيئا يا أبت إني قد جاءني من العلم ما لم يأتك فاتبعني أهدك صراطا سويا يا أبت لا تعبد الشيطان إن الشيطان كان للرحمن عصيا يا أبت إني أخاف أن يمسك عذاب من الرحمن فتكون للشيطان وليا قال أراغب أنت عن آلهتي يا إبراهيم لئن لم تنته لأرجمنك واهجرني مليا قال سلام عليك سأستغفر لك ربي إنه كان بي حفيا وأعتزلكم وما تدعون من دون الله وأدعو ربي عسى ألا أكون بدعاء ربي ربي شقيا فلما اعتزلهم وما يعبدون من دون الله وهبنا له إسحاق ويعقوب وكلا جعلنا نبيا ووهبنا لهم من رحمتنا وجعلنا لهم لسان صدق عليا واذكر في الكتاب موسى إنه كان مخلصا وكان رسولا نبيا وناديناه من جانب الطور الأيمن وقربناه نجيا ووهبنا له من رحمتنا أخاه هارون نبيا واذكر في الكتاب إسماعيل إنه كان صادق الوعد وكان رسولا نبيا وكان يأمر أهله بالصلاة والزكاة وكان عند ربه مرضيا واذكر في الكتاب إدريس إنه كان صديقا نبيا ورفعناه مكانا عليا أولئك الذين أنعم الله عليهم من النبيين من ذرية آدم وممن حملنا مع نوح ومن ذرية إبراهيم وإسرائيل وممن هدينا واجتبينا إذا تتلى عليهم آيات الرحمن خروا سجدا وبكيا فخلف من بعدهم خلف أضاعوا الصلاة واتبعوا الشهوات فسوف يلقون غيا إلا من تاب وآمن وعمل صالحا فأولئك يدخلون الجنة ولا يظلمون شيئا جنات عدن التي وعد الرحمن عباده بالغيب إنه كان وعده مأتيا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا إلا سلاما ولهم رزقهم فيها بكرة وعشيا تلك الجنة التي نورث من عبادنا من كان تقيا تلك الجنة التي نورث من عبادنا من كان تقيا تلك الجنة التي نورث من عبادنا من كان تقيا وما نتنزل إلا بأمر ربك له ما بين أيدينا وما خلفنا وما بين ذلك وما كان ربك نسيا وما كان ربك نسيا رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما فاعبده واصطبر لعبادته هل تعلم له سميا ويقول الإنسان أإذا ما مت لسوف أخرج حيا ويقول الإنسان أإذا ما مت لسوف أخرج حيا أولا يذكر الإنسان أنا خلقناه من قبل ولم يك شيئا فوربك لنحشرنهم والشياطين ثم لنحضرنهم حول جهنم جثيا ثم لننزعن من كل شيعة أيهم أشد على الرحمن عتيا ثم لنحن أعلم بالذين هم أولى بها صليا وإن منكم إلا واردها كان على ربك حتما مقضيا ثم ننجي الذين اتقوا ونذر الظالمين فيها جثيا وإذا تتلى عليهم آياتنا بينات قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أي الفريقين خير مقاما وأحسن نديا وكم أهلكنا قبلهم من قرن هم أحسن أثاثا ورئيا